Hello, I'm Michael Graham with New Hampshire Journal. Welcome to the New Hampshire Institute of Politics and the NH Journal 1st Congressional District Republican Primary Debate. We're so glad that you're watching. And thank you again to Manchester Public Television Service for carrying our debates here. The goal of this debate is very simple. We want to help Republican primary voters in the 1st Congressional District figure out which candidate is the best for them. What that means is you hear some topics that we don't cover. For example, climate change, because as our readers tell us all the time, that's not a top tier issue for Republican primary voters the way it is on the Democratic side of the aisle. But what we will do is you'll hear topics that are clearly important to Republicans. And so that's why we are so glad that you're here, and that's why we are glad that our candidates are here. Joe Kelly Levasseur, you can applaud. Russell Prescott, Holly Novoletsky, and Chris Bright. The rules are simple. The first to 100 wins. No, I'm kidding. The rules are simple. Everyone gets a minute. If your name is mentioned by another candidate, you get 30 seconds to rebut. We'll have opening statements and closing statements. So why don't we start right now with our opening statement from Alderman John Kelly Levasseur.
Joe Kelly Levasseur.
Joe Kelly Levasseur. Thank you. There it is. The screw up. There it is.
Go. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Thank you for New Hampshire Journal for hosting this event. Thank you to the candidates that are here with me today. At an important time in the history of our country, as the country has taken a very sharp left turn under Joe Biden and the Democrats and their woke mind virus issues that they have spread across America. I am a 7-term alderman at large for the city of Manchester. I've been in the public arena since 1999, a quarter of a century, when I first won my first race for alderman. I've been called upon by the state party to run for state senate. I've run for register of probate. I ran for state rep last election cycle. I've always been a ballot filler, but always put my heart into these races and to make sure that Democrats at least had an opponent. In 2016, I ran against, I had a primary race against Jim Adams for executive council. I won the primary and then lost a narrow, had a narrow loss to Chris Pappas in 2016. He's had $300,000, I had 21, and it was a very close race. So, that means stop? Okay.
Well, thank you all. I'm Russell Prescott. Thank you very much for being here. We need to talk about the kitchen table and how expensive it is for people just to get along these days. Speaking to people all the time, they say, we are getting crushed by inflation, and Chris Pappas is not doing anything about it. We're also being crushed by our borders being open, and Chris Pappas is not taking action to cure it. I've served 10 years in the state senate, 4 years on the executive council. I know how to win races. I've won against Maggie Hassan in a Democrat district because I'm a positive campaigner. Independent voters want a positive message for America. We need to cure our problems by being fiscally conservative. Every single term I was in the state senate, we balanced the budget with a surplus. I stand on my record as a pro-life candidate, as a very fiscal conservative, and the fact that I've lived here a long time and I love New Hampshire.
I'm Holly Novoletsky. I am a business owner. I own Novel Ironworks in Greenland, New Hampshire. I'm a second-generation structural steel fabricator. I also own Rose Steel, which is a structural steel erection company. We put up the infrastructure throughout New England, and I employ over 100 people in the state of New Hampshire. I'm also a psychiatric and a geriatric nurse practitioner, and I've worked in dementia care most of my career. And many of you heard me say this, there is a need for me in DC. Also, I'm a veteran. I've spent 8 years in the Army Reserve Nurse Corps and 2 years in the New Hampshire National Guard. But what I'm not is I'm not a politician. I'm not going to pander. I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm going to look you in the eye, and I'm going to do what I say. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Bright. I am also proudly not a politician. I'm a father, an entrepreneur. I started a company 6 years ago from scratch through the pandemic, built it to be what was named by Inc. 5000 as the fastest growing private company in New Hampshire last year. I'm also a soldier, started my career in the Army Corps of Engineers, and finished as a team leader within a Special Forces unit down in Florida. I don't have to tell you that things are bad. I think we all know that. What I can tell you is that career politicians cause this mess, and there's no end in sight. But I intend to be different. I intend to change that, and I look forward to talking about the issues with you today. Thanks.
So the questioning is going to begin with our own Evan Lips with New Hampshire Journal, and just so you know, we're going to go and we'll proceed in order. So the next question is going to start with Russell Prescott, go around, come to the back, and the next question to you, Holly, and that's how it's going to work. So you can kind of anticipate when you're going to speak next. Evan Lips, you have a question?
I do. Thank you. What is the single most important issue to you as a candidate for Congress, and what specific actions would you take to address it?
Certainly, it's be able to achieve the American dream. You know, I've lived it. I've been a 30-year entrepreneur as a professional engineer, and I have 5 children, been married 42 years, and 8 grandkids that I'm very concerned about with the economy. If we can the market and increase inflation. Once that inflation is under control, we will have lower interest rates, and labor will be able to catch up with being well paid. And that's how you would cure the problem of having a poor economy today. I was just speaking to a friend of mine. He is on Social Security. He's in his 70s. He's finding it harder and harder to make ends meet living on Social Security. We must protect Social Security at the same time. So that is how we cure the problem of our poor economy. Thank you.
As I went around the district, I really thought it was going to be the economy, but what I hear from voters, it's the border, it's immigration, it's illegal immigration. We need to close the border. We need to go back to the Trump era policies, catch them to war, build the border, build the wall. We need to stop incentivizing illegal immigration. We need to stop paying for NGOs. We need to stop paying for sanctuary cities and sanctuary towns. We need to stop giving money to countries who are not holding back this illegal immigration migration. We need to take care of our people here at home, our veterans, our elderly, our disabled. Do you know we spent $66 billion on illegal immigration last year and $3 billion on homeless vets?
No, you're good. Another 15 seconds. You want to keep going?
That's it. We need to stop this illegal immigration.
Yeah, for me, similar, and I don't mean to repeat what they said, but I agree with that. I look at the top 2 issues as like 1A and 1B. But the economy, for me, is the single biggest thing. You know, coming out of COVID, inflation went rampant. And so what a lot of granite staters, and my own parents included, it's really tapped folks on fixed income. And so a lot of people started spending on credit cards. And so now you're outside your means, credit card debt starts to rack up. Well, then how do we check inflation? We checked it by raising interest rates. So not only is that credit card debt, but now you're paying more on it, and that's killing people. Everything from heat to groceries to gas, and it's unsustainable. And so there are things that you can do to check the economy, from a congressional standpoint. Won't have the time to go into that with 15 seconds remaining, but that is my number 1 issue, and there are ways to answer. There are too many firsts because of the feckless, irresponsible leadership or lack thereof by Biden. You can't really say one is more important than the other. They're all extremely important. Inflation, the border, the housing crisis in this country, especially in New Hampshire. The way to solve all of this is to do one important thing. Elect me, send me to Washington, and I will be Donald Trump's main guy that will be working on an America First agenda. The America First agenda that the president is proposing is exactly what we need to straighten out all of the issues that we know are a problem in this country and in New Hampshire. Energy is a major problem in this state. We need to do better. We need to work harder. We need to find ways to get our energy down. New Hampshire has
We go from air conditioning to heating, and we don't get a break in this state. We need to get electricity under control in this state, and that's what I want to get to Washington to do.
Excellent. So, Holly, we're going to follow up on this topic with you. President Biden says the way to fight high prices, his strategy has been to give people more money to spend. In other words, we're going to give you money for green tech, and so you can buy a green tech product, and that's the answer to inflation. Or college student loan debt, more money for people. In other words, make it easier for you to buy things that are now more expensive. If you were in Congress, what would you be doing about inflation? And specifically, what would you be doing about inflation that Representative Chris Pappas isn't?
There are two ways to address inflation. First, we need to cut spending. We can't be passing these omnibus bills. We don't need to be having earmarks for heated streets up in Berlin. We need to stop spending on illegal immigration. We need to close down the border. We can't be spending billions of dollars on people when we don't have it and we're taking debt for it. We need to stop with the 87,000 IRS agents, claw back some of the COVID money, stop sending all the money to Ukraine. We need to stop spending this money that we don't have. The other half is we have to be energy independent. Energy drives our economy. If we are energy independent, not going to countries who hate us, begging for fuel and making them rich, we will make our country better. Because here, energy drives our economy. Transportation, manufacturing, and individual home heating. We need to be energy independent again, so we need to do both of those. We need to have all forms of energy, including nuclear, and we need to open up drilling.
Chris Bright.
Yeah, to answer your question, I mean, I got when I left the Army, I got a master's degree from MIT, and I studied under some of the world's best economists. Let's be honest, college professors aren't known to be conservative. And yet even these folks are kind of shaking their head at some of the policies that we're rolling out. When you flood an economy with a lot of free money, people go out and spend it. It creates upward pressure on pricing. And that's what we're seeing. And so I think it's a disastrous policy that the Biden administration put forward when we flooded. I understood during COVID that we had to bail and help some people out, but we needed to stop that a lot sooner than we did. That student debt forgiveness is another thing that I just have such a hard time with. That's a tax that's going to cost every household $3,000 at the current state. And if it actually goes all the way, what Biden wants, it's going to increase your tax burden by about $30,000. How do we pay for these types of things? We've already killed people, we've messed up our economy, and these policies are just disastrous.
Joe Kelly-LeVasseur.
What has Chris Pappas failed to do or not done? Chris Pappas has failed the state of New Hampshire in a variety of ways. We have a housing crisis in our state. City of Manchester has been inundated with homeless people, hundreds of homeless people. We had to build a shelter to put people in. We have 2 shelters in Manchester. All across our district, we have homeless people all over the place. We have people with mental health and mental illness issues that are not being housed. In Manchester, we have 5 low-income, federally managed and owned properties. When they were spending trillions and trillions of dollars on who knows what, they weren't spending anything on low-income housing. They could have put 5 more buildings, hopefully not all in Manchester, spread them around our district and gotten people off the streets. He has failed us on electric rates. What he's really failed us at is not criticizing the Democrats, the president. He's been invisible, he's been quiet, he's never argued with his own guys, he doesn't disagree with his own guys, he just sits there as a puppet and a bootlicker for Biden.
Russell Prescott.
Yes, looking back at my career, balanced budgets every single week, 40 years in business, growing a business from 10 employees to 50 employees. And on Thursday, I'm going to balance the budget and pay a bunch of paychecks. That's what we do every single week as business people. And I brought that to the state Senate. I put businesses first. I actually lowered taxes on business so they could thrive and hire more people. Also, you have to be a fiscal conservative and not just talk about it. I proved it. We solved a deficit that was equal to 1% of our gross domestic product here in New Hampshire, and we did it in 1 year. We have a 6% deficit in the United States in Congress. We could fix it in 6 years. I've done it. Elect me, and I will get it done. Thank you.
So, Chris Bright, there's a topic that comes up whenever New Hampshire Journal talks to Republicans about the 1st Congressional District, and it is, why don't we win? It's been a decade. This year, if Republicans don't win, it'll have been a decade since a Republican was elected in the 1st Congressional District. So 2 questions for all of you, starting with you. Why do you think that's true, and why are you the candidate on the stage tonight who can fix that in 2024?
Well, thanks for just stealing my thunder on my closing speech, Mike. Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's 1 out of 33 seats across the House of Representatives and the Senate that Republicans own across New England. And as a business guy, as a military strategist, I think about this stuff in kind of phases. So we have to get somebody just back at the table. And whether you like it or not, and we're all Republicans sitting in this room, when I first moved to the state to go to grad school back in 2005 when I got out of the Army, this was a red state. And then we became purple, and now we're a blue state. And so it takes somebody to kind of engage with that independent voter, because independent voters are going to be the ones that are going to carry the day, right? So I think where Caroline went a little bit south is, she was too far, MAGA. And the other thing that hurt us last time was the abortion issue. So Republicans have to get our act together on abortion, which I think we're doing. We also have to be able to kind of engage and attract that independent voter.
How are we going to win that seat back? I can tell you, we have a perfect example. Manchester, New Hampshire. For the first time since 1998, the board is red. We have 7 Republican aldermen and a Republican mayor. And for the first time since 1998, we have a Republican chairman, Joseph Kelly Lavassa. And you know why we turned red? Because we had Joyce Craig as our mayor. Please do not vote for her to be the governor of this state. What she did to Manchester in 6 years, you think we're the bluest city in the whole state? I think we're the bluest city in the state, and she turned us red because she did such a horrible job. We have shown that the red wave is coming because our city is blue, and we won in areas we hadn't won in 24, 26 years. The red wave is coming because we've already had a red wave right here in Manchester. And there's no one they fear more. There's no one Chris Pappas, the invisible man, fears more as Joe Lavasser. I came very close in 2016. These guys coming out on the seacoast, they're losing by 9–10%. Not going to happen this time. This is the year we win.
Thank you very much. I look back at my races against Maggie Hassan, and it was a positive message that takes the independent voter a second look at a Republican. A Republican with a positive message is what I have been doing for many, many years. In a wave election year for Democrats in 2018, I was running for Congress, I was running for Executive Council, and I won in that district when my senator lost and all of the rep seats were lost to lose the majority in the House and in the Senate. Chris Pappas is wanting someone else besides me running against him. Him and I served together in the Executive Council. When we worked there on the council, we brought down opioid problems, overdoses and the deaths. We brought them down. They are back up again because of Chris Pappas's border policy. They're back up to pre-pandemic stages, and we need to call him on that and have a positive message. We can get the job done. Thank you.
We don't need more of the same. We don't need people who have worked with him and caused this problem. What we really need is something different. And as Chris has noted, the demographics of New Hampshire have changed over the years. And as people have moved to New Hampshire because it is such a favorable state to live in because of our taxes and because of our quality of life, they bring with them their politics. And we need to educate them about the values here in New Hampshire and about why we're different, and to leave their politics home and to adopt ours if they came here for that reason. Also, we need to point out that Chris Pappas has not listened to us. I sat on the board of the American Institute of Steel Construction, and we had a foreign trade case against China, Mexico, and Canada. And I went to them and asked for their help, Pappas, Shaheen, and Hassan. I had to make an appointment in D.C. I flew to D.C. I didn't get to see them. They don't represent us. We need to make sure that people understand we're not being heard, and we point out policy by policy.
Okay, moving on, we're going to start with Joe. New Hampshire residents pay some of the highest rates for electricity in the country. What would you do as a member of Congress to drive those costs down? And do you believe that offshore wind is part of the solution?
Offshore wind, no, I'm not a big believer in that. I think those windmills, when I drive up north, sticking up over the mountains is just not attractive at all. And I don't think they produce what is necessary. I've been looking into these micro nuclear stations that there was one that was just, I think it was New Vale or New Kale. It was a company that was just given in 2023 a patent. They're small. They last for 10 years with only one shot of plutonium in there. These are the types of things that I think in New Hampshire we could use to help us bring down electricity. I want you to know I owned a restaurant for 35 years. I started when I was 25 years old. I had Joe Kelly's on Elm Street for 23 years, and then I moved down to Theo's for 10 years. If anybody knows about electricity and electric bills, When I sold that 5 years ago, my utility costs were $25,000. The people that are renting from me now, their utility costs are $50,000. You know what happens when those bills go up? They pass the prices on to the consumers. Prices go up, costs go up. I've been a small businessman my whole entire life. I'm currently a self-employed lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 23 years. If anybody knows about cost, electricity, and how to run business,
Thank
it's me.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. When you speak about the wind power offshore, I am dead set against it. It is going to harm our economy. I mean, it's going to harm our environment out there. It is going to generate so much heat that the water is going to be superheated for trying to cool down the generators. And it's going to damage our ecology there out in our beautiful, pristine ocean. Next is that we need, to open up the Keystone Pipeline again to allow the freer flow of energy into our country. And then also have all those oil field leases renewed, get them going again, start drilling more. We can do also more nuclear, and that's, just an all of the above approach and make sure it gets done. And that's where I'm really, really impressed with Donald Trump. He's done a great job on that part of making our economy strong by making us energy independent, and I'm 100% behind him.
The Biden administration right now is fast-tracking a windmill project in the Gulf of Maine. 1 million acres they want to put into windmills. Unbelievable. There is a role for green and renewable energy, but not in my lifetime and not in my grandson's lifetime will we be completely dependent on it, especially in New England where it's weather dependent. We need to have all forms of energy, including nuclear, and we need to be energy independent. That will drive our economy. So I agree with Donald Trump, as do my opponents here. All forms of energy, including nuclear. We need to be that. But there is a role for green and renewable. We'll build the infrastructure, and we'll control the transition over to green and renewables for that can be met. We won't mandate it.
I support all forms of energy. Energy drives the economy, but with that said, like my colleagues here, I think wind energy is the most inefficient form of energy. It does have its impacts on the environment. It's not as cost effective per kilowatt hour, so I'm not a fan of that. Under Donald Trump, we had an energy policy that I think spoiled all of us. I think I was paying somewhere around $1 a gallon at the time, and then Joe Biden gets elected and he's like, hold my beer. And he cancels the Keystone Pipeline. We canceled a lot of leases, and at one point, it was up around $5 a gallon. And then we killed our economy with inflation and all this other stuff. And so energy is one way to hedge against a failing economy. And I think the more that we can invest in our energy infrastructure, the better it will be for the now, the better it will be for the future.
So, Russell Prescott, this is not the first time we've done this. You were part of the first Congressional District debate 2 years ago. 2 years before that, we did debates for New Hampshire Journal. And I started off every debate, the early question was, where are you on Donald Trump? Because that was a top issue for primary voters. Here we are 6 years later. Where are you on Donald? It has not changed a bit. He's still the center of the Republican Party. So very quickly, each one of you, who did you support in the First in the Nation primary this year? And when people ask you, so where are you on Trump? What do you tell them?
I tell them I'm running for Congress to beat Chris Pappas, and Donald Trump is the guy who I'm going to get behind because he's our nominee, and I'm supporting him 100%.
In the First in the Nation primary, who did you support?
First in the Nation primary is a rehashing old, and I want to focus on the new, which is we need to defeat Chris Pappas. I have a broad spectrum of support from Al Baldessaro to Doug Scammon, the former speaker, all the way to the president of the Senate, Jeb Bradley, and Kat Kammack from Washington, D.C., Congresswoman from Florida. If we bind that whole party together, we will win in November. And the person with the most experience to get it done and has proven he can do it is myself. That's the only reason why I'm running, is because I know that I have the most experience to be able to get the job done. And I've proven it to the independent voter who trusts that because I've proven what I've always said I would do. I did.
Holly Novletsky, who did you support in the First Nation primary?
I will answer your question.
Okay.
All right. I voted for Trump 2.5 times, both elections and the primary, and I will continue to support him. We have destabilized the world under Biden. We've destabilized it to the point where I have grandchildren. I'm Jewish, and I fear for their future, and I feel that he's the only person who's going to bring stability back to this country and this world.
So I voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and then again in 2020, also volunteered for his campaign in 2020. But in the primary, I voted for Nikki Haley, and here's why. I've always run saying that I believe that we need a younger generation of Americans. And, you know, I thought that both of those two, Nikki Haley and Donald Trump, coming in were the two best candidates. So I was happy to see them. I put a lot of time thinking about who I was going to vote for. I ultimately cast that vote for Nikki because, one, like I said, I think we need a younger generation to kind of carry the mantle forward. But two, outside of all the policies we're talking about today, I think the single biggest danger to this country is the polarization of this country. And for somebody who shared a very similar platform with Donald Trump, I felt like with Nikki Haley, we got a younger generation of politician with a very similar platform of Donald Trump that didn't have all of the baggage. Now, with that said, now that Donald Trump's our nominee, I'm happy to support him. I'm all in on the guy. And I'll be voting for him again in 2024.
In 2016, I hosted Donald Trump at my restaurant, Theo's. Anderson Cooper was there. It was a great town hall. I got to meet him. My wife was there. We had a bunch of people. It was a really, really cool setting. I got to see him in person, and he's got a great sense of humor. He's very competitive. He's very passionate. Of course, I supported him there. In this next round, I voted for him, of course, in 2020, and then for this last election, Russell doesn't want to say who voted for in the primary. I not only supported Donald Trump, I spoke at his rally. I was one of the 5 speakers that got to introduce the president. It was an amazing experience. I threw a lot of red meat out there, and when it was all done, everyone was asking me to run for Congress and whatever. And I got to sign a lot of autographs, meet a lot of people, but the most important thing is that I'm not only passionate about the man, I think we've seen now, are you better off 4 years, than you are today 4 years ago? We know we're not. We know how good of a job Donald Trump can do. And I know when I get down there with him, we'll have this place cleaned up within a year. This country will be back on the right track.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is
By the way, I have Trump or bust on my signs.
And may I comment, since Russell Prescott
He did it.
Yes.
He invoked your name.
This
so go
is
ahead.
a
30
very,
seconds.
very personal thing to me. I worked very hard to pass the voter ID bill here in New Hampshire because people have really, really a deep feeling about voting and how private it is. We need to make sure that we keep this voter ID going and improving it. And to ask that question is just dividing the party. We need to become united in the party. We have a nominee, and we must get behind Donald Trump.
Thank you. This is for Holly. We'll start with you. President Biden, since he's taken office, border security officials say they've been witnessing a record number of illegal crossings along the northern border. We've also seen several high-profile crimes across the border in Massachusetts committed by illegal immigrants allowed into the U.S. by the Biden administration. As a member of Congress, what would you do to address this problem?
Immediately shut down the border. We need to shut down the border. We need to rebuild the wall. We need to reinstate catch and release. We need to have stay in Mexico and stay in Canada. We need to stop funding NGOs and sanctuary cities and sanctuary towns and sanctuary states. We need to stop giving free health care, free food to our illegal immigrants when our veterans are living on the street. In Massachusetts, they just rehabbed this Chelsea Soldiers Home and the prison very beautifully. That's for the illegal immigrants. They did nothing for our homeless vets. That needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
So the Customs and Border Patrol estimates that there are about 3,000 Border Patrol agents short. So I think that's one way that we can immediately lock the border down. It's not only just having folks to patrol, but also folks to process all these asylum requests. And the asylum process has been taken for granted, and a lot of people are coming in and claiming asylum for reasons that aren't necessarily asylum. And there's such a backlog that to Holly's point, we're kind of going catch and release, we're letting them back, and it's taking years to get through this process. The Remain in Mexico policy is something that was highly effective under Donald Trump. I also believe that we should be working with these downstream countries. So last year, we spent almost $700 million in El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, and they're just letting these people transit through their countries. And so we should be able to leverage that and help them or encourage them to lock that down. The wall is important. We could also augment that with different types of technology. There's a lot of different things that you could do to address the border.
Could you repeat that question, please?
No problem. So since President Biden took office, border security officials say they've seen a record number of illegal crossings along the northern border. We've also seen several high-profile crimes across the border in Massachusetts committed by illegal immigrants allowed into the U.S. by the Biden administration. As a member of Congress, what would you do to address this problem?
Well, you get rid of Mr. Invisible, who has done nothing about our northern border, which we wouldn't have even believed that would be happening in our lifetimes. I never would have thought that occurred. 12,000 illegals coming across New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire is a scary thing. My understanding is there are 15,000 illegals living in amongst us here just in New Hampshire. What would I do? I just go back to the policies that the President Trump had in place. I trusted him on what he was able to do. He made some good deals. He's a good deal maker. Finish that wall, and I think that will do the trick and help us. But what are we going to do about what we have in place right now is going to be the major problem we're going to be dealing with once Trump gets in office.
It is very sad when you think about Chris Pappas, and I call it politic playing Pappas. He comes to the state of New Hampshire, and he gets on the radio and says, we can't have all of these illegal aliens coming into our country. And what does he do about it? He's a double talker. He says one thing prior to the election to get elected again, and then do something else. This is a problem. We need to just enforce our laws today. He should be calling on the president to be the executive of our nation and enforce the laws. They're Democrat and Republican laws that have been debated and passed over the past decades and century. If we enforce those laws, the Border Patrol community says 70% of our problem would be solved. And Chris Pappas is doing nothing. He's silent to Joe Biden. And if Joe Biden doesn't act, then we should act to impeach a president who's not carrying out his executive duties. And that was what I would do as a Republican in Congress.
So I want to follow up with.
Holly, did you get a chance to answer?
I did.
You started with Holly. Yeah, I think.
But I'll take it again.
No. So I want to follow up with this question. So the Republican Party's new platform with the convention coming up was released today. It's not finally voted on. There's another vote, but it's likely to finish. And Donald Trump was directly involved in putting it together. And we know because many sections of it are in all caps. And one of the all caps is that he's going to, quote, carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. Chris Bright, if you're in Congress and there's a bill to carry out the largest deportation operation in American history, will you support it? Why or why not?
Yeah, I will support that. I will support that. You know, these folks are here illegally. Now, I think that there's a lot of other ways to curb it, but as we catch these folks and as they, you know, pop onto our radar, they don't have a right to be here. I mean, that's kind of why they're called illegal aliens. So I 100% support that. I haven't had a chance to kind of read through his policy on how he would do that. I've got some ideas on how we could go about that, but if that were to he were to enact that, I would 100% stand by that.
Yes, Mr. Indivisible should call Joe Biden, but just not after 8 p.m. at night. The first thing that that we need to do, if I get down to Congress, of course, I'll support the president in his plan to deport illegals, but we have to focus on MS-13. We have to focus on the criminals. We know, or we believe, that over 1 million of the people that have come into this country are criminals or with a criminal past or with a criminal record being let out by countries who want to get rid of the people in their jails. They're saving tons and tons of money, not having to feed. They don't have to manage them. They don't have to pay for all of the things they have to do to take care of prisoners. So here's your ticket out of here. Get down in United States and go have a fun time in Chicago, New York, the big cities. LA, they've turned those places into Crazyville. So he did a really good job, and I was surprised how good of a job he was able to do by going after the MS-13 gangs. And I think he has a formula for it. I think he puts the old people back into place. We'll be able to get that under control. That is the first priority we have to deal with. People should not feel scared to go outside of their neighborhoods or visit New York City anymore.
We do have a problem. Chris Pappas is silent on this as well. When we have illegal aliens coming into our country and committing the crime to get here, and then we wait until they commit another crime, That leaves us open to attacks on our personal property, at our homes, and we've seen it in the past. We only deal with deporting after criminals break the law again. We have to stop that, and that it means that we must have deportation. We must have it to enforce our laws. We have in our laws asylum clauses. We have in our laws humanitarian clauses. That is all intact in our laws that we have if we would just enforce the law. And again, Chris Pappas is doing nothing about it. He is not calling on the president to enforce our laws, and it would cure 70% of these illegals coming into our country.
I do believe we need to deport them. I don't believe that we're going to go door to door. I think the media has made that impression that we're going to go door to door, and that's not it. We're going to take away the work visas so they don't have a way of making a living. We're going to take away their incentivization so they don't have free housing and health care and whatever. And some will self-deport. The others, when they're caught by law enforcement or come in contact with law enforcement, they will be deported. Anyone who comes in contact needs to be deported. I do not support a path to citizenship. Their first act of coming into this country was to break our law. I know that, Chris, you weren't sure if you would support a path to citizenship. I absolutely do not believe in a path to citizenship. We have people who've come here. My grandmother came here in 1913 to escape the pogroms. I have workers in my office, in my company, who have come here and waited years. I would not do any disservice to them or dishonor them by allowing a path to citizenship.
You were invoked. Chris Bright, 30 seconds.
So I know you've taken that out of context. I don't agree with your personification of me. The path to citizenship was actually something Donald Trump supported, and it was voted down by the Democrats. And so when I was talking about the path to citizenship, it was in response to what would it take to get a wall built. And so I supported that, just like Donald Trump did, and the fact that you take that out of context, I think, is interesting.
Okay. By the way, I just want to, before we go to another question for Joe Kelly from Evan, great job on the time. You guys are just doing a great job. So thank you.
the cards here?
Well, the cards are good. Well, hey, the yellow, you still got 15 seconds to have to rush. But you're doing great. Keep it focused. I just want to say thank you very much. I have to say this because earlier today, the White House described the upcoming press conference with Joe Biden, and this is their words, a big boy press conference. Yes, and he might even get a treat afterwards. And so I think we can say this is a big boy debate already. So thank you all for keeping the time close, and please go ahead, Evan.
No problem. Okay, Joe, following up on that last topic, if you found yourself, on a debate stage with Representative Pappas, and you were allowed to ask him one question, what would it be and why?
First of all, so that means they let him come out without his diaper on, so that's great. And by the way, to cure all of this immigration stuff, let's try E-Verify. What's the first question? I've been thinking about this. You read my mind. It's something I think about every day. The first question, I'm going to look over. He's going to be visible. It's going to shock me. I'm going to see him, and I'm going to say, who the hell's running the White House? You know, tell us. Who is really running the White House? We know Joe Biden isn't. He's been on vacation 40% of the time that he's been in office, sitting on the beach, looking like Bernie's, the weekend at the Bernie's, laying on that, I mean, he looks like a dead guy on the beach. Who's running this country? Because I want to know. Is it Obama? Is it who? Obviously, it's not Joe Biden. I don't think he's that crazy, but whoever the hell he has running the White House is. And the woke mind virus that is spread through this country is because of whoever is running that White House. And we need to find out what's going on and who's running the place.
Thank you. You know, my heroes, right, are veterans. And one of my ancestors is John Prescott. He lived in Raymond, New Hampshire in 1775. And he heard the call of John Stark, says, live free or die. Death is not the worst of evils. And he went to the Battle of Bunker Hill and gave his life. It is a slap in the face of all our veterans, those who have given the ultimate sacrifice, that we have a president that will not understand his condition is hurting us. It is dangerous. It is estranged. The Democrat Party is behaving. One side says get rid of. The other side says we're behind him 100%. I'm calling on today Chris Pappas to say, Chris, please ask Joe Biden to step down. for the benefit of our country and all of our veterans who need a strong leader to make us safe in the world and make us safe at home.
Your one question for the representative.
How do you sleep at night with yourself? How do you watch the American dream being destroyed? We have no future for our children, no opportunities, crushing debt. How do you sleep at night? How do you justify what you've done to this country by being silent?
So there's this business quote that I love. It says that the greats secure the future while taking care of the present. And so I spend about 10% of my week kind of looking at Chris Pappas and studying him. Obviously, the majority of my time right now is spent on the primary. But when I look at Chris Pappas and everything that's happened with the border, like I look forward to the opportunity to debate him. And it's almost going to be a mic drop moment. Because in a disproportionate amount of folks that are on the international terror watch list are coming across our northern border. And there's actual things that we could be doing, and he did nothing about it for 3.5 years until the polls started to show that it was hurting him. So when somebody steps up and starts doing something 6 months before an election, to me that's disingenuous. So my question to him on a debate would be very simple. I would ask him about the border, and I would ask him what the hell he's thinking, and I would just shut up and let him try to explain his way out of it.
Okay, we've got some lightning questions for you, 30 seconds each, a little bit lighter, like to reset for the rest. We come to the big finish here. I just want you to know, just got off the phone, got a call from Donald Trump while you were talking. He can't decide who to pick for vice president. He wants you to tell him who to pick for vice president. It can't be you, and it cannot be a family member. Russell Prescott, 30 seconds. Who do you tell Donald Trump to pick for vice president?
I would say, because the only person really I know in politics down in Washington, D.C. is Representative Kat Cammack. And I would say, why not pick a woman? Why not pick a dynamic woman, one that can grasp the independent voter and win an election?
Do they have to be dead or alive?
They need to be able to serve as president of the United States, should that be required. Now,
have to be
if she were, for the Democrats, when we do this primary, it's totally different. They can in fact pick dead people, but in this case, you'll have to pick someone who could serve as president.
I would find that a really difficult question to answer because he has so many good choices right now that are up in the
It can
front
be
line.
anyone
Oh,
who can
can
serve
be
as president.
I'm going to pass on that.
Okay.
I like Doug Burgum. I think he did a really nice job as governor of North Dakota. I think their economy was humming. And I mean, when was the last time you thought, man, North Dakota's a hotbed of, economic progress? So there's a guy that stepped in. I believe he had a balanced budget. I might be fact checked on that, but well-spoken. Really did a decent job in the primary. I think he's solid on policy. I think he'd be a good choice for vice president.
I just want to give Hawley credit for that last round. You won that hands down. If I get a chance to debate Pappas, I'm going to ask him that same question. How in the hell do you sleep at night? DeSantis, that would be my first choice, but because they live in the same state,
Right.
he can't go. So I'm going to ask Ron to move up to New Hampshire. He can be their vice president. He's ready on day one if anything happens.
Your second lightning question, 30 seconds each. We'll start with Holly this time. Another emergency. Michael Graham showed up at your house.
Oh.
You have to take him out for lunch or dinner
Yeah.
at a restaurant. No home cooking. You got to spend some money on me. Where in the 1st Congressional District do you take me?
We go to Gibbs Garage. We like that.
T-Bones.
Oh, excellent.
Well, because of the Biden economy, we're not going out. I can't afford you, but you know where I would take you? I'll take you to Market Basket. You can get a chicken, a nice roasted
Yeah,
chicken
they're
for
good.
$5. We get a couple of sides, 2 glasses of water, 25 cents each with ice. We sit right there. We have a beautiful table. We can watch all the people coming in and out of Market Basket. Thank God for Market Basket, folks.
Russell, treat me better than that.
My
Oh, yeah,
favorite place in the world.
Same place my father brought me when I was much younger. Trackside Diner, Lincoln Street, Exeter, New Hampshire.
You're up with Joe.
Okay. All right, where are we at? Joe, how would you describe the affordable housing situation in the 1st District? And what role, if any, should the federal government play in addressing it?
Yeah, I firmly believe we really blew it. I mean, we had trillions and trillions of dollars coming out during COVID. We had, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the biggest lie that ever happened. That money could have come into New Hampshire, and it surely could have come in to Manchester. I've been a 7-term Republican alderman in that city, and I've lived with what we've had for a crisis. Under Joyce Craig, they put up safe stations, so we were pulling people in from all over the state, coming into Manchester, saying, we'll take care of your needs. We have 3 hospitals, we have 2 shelters, we have we have access to a lot of drugs. Affordable housing is the #1 issue in this state. I just saw a poll, and it's really high up there. You know, people who are living in apartments are getting killed because the rents have gone up. But when you bring 10 million illegals into this country, where do you think they're moving into? 6 of them are renting an apartment, splitting the rent 6 ways. Well, that pushes 2 other people out, or another American out of it, or a citizen of New Hampshire out. We have to do a better job. A priority for me as a congressman, bring money in from the federal government and bring in low-income, affordable housing for our seniors and our veterans
Russell
first.
Prescott.
Yes. To fix the problem of housing, you must reduce the deficit. And therefore, what we would end up doing is stopping the flow of money supply into the economy that we borrow and flood, and it creates the inflation. We stop the inflation, we stop the increase of our interest rates, the interest rates go down, and we will have everything more affordable. You won't be able to go out and have breakfast for $15 anymore if we have the inflation continue the way it's going. And that's already too much. I was going to treat you to Trackside Diner. It was $16 for breakfast for 1 person. So we need to get a handle on our budget. And you know, it's not a popular subject matter, but if we do not cure our budget deficit, we will not be able to cure our Social Security going bankrupt. We must be fiscal conservatives. That is why I'm running for office. That's #1 promise to you. I will only vote for a reduction in our budget deficit every year until it's balanced.
It's multifaceted. First, we do need to get spending under control because people can't afford to save for a down payment on a house. We need to cut the incentives and the Green Deal because HUD and the Department of Agriculture just estimated with the green requirements that are going into new construction, it's going to save a family about $100 plus a year. It's going to cost them $7,500 extra dollars to buy the house. How long is that going to pay off?
Right.
Putting in the green deals in the condos and the housing, it's an extra $30,000 on the cost of the housing. We need to stop that. We need to stop that right away. We need to get spending down so people can afford to save up for a down payment and they have interest rates that they can manage.
So inflation has driven the cost of everything up, and in order to check inflation, we raise interest rates. Well, interest rates now make it harder to buy that money or borrow that money and buy that house. But really, one thing that Congress can do is when you look at the housing market, it's a supply issue. There's not enough supply to meet a growing demand. So over the last 5 years, institutional investors like Goldman Sachs and even folks that have dozens of properties, just converting them into Airbnbs, that's taken 30% of owner-occupied housing off of the market. So in the last 5 years, that's down by 30%. So obviously that's going to drive pricing up. We're giving tax breaks to those banks still to do that. And there's a lot of different incentives out there where they can roll the profits in and not pay any tax burden. So that's hurting Americans, and I would do away with that. The second thing is there's a shortage in this country of skilled labor. The average age of skilled labor in the United States is 55 years old, and more than 70% of that skilled labor is over 50 years old. And for every 5 that retires, only 1's going into the trades. We need to start prioritizing our trades back here in this country.
Russell Prescott, this is the first Republican National Committee platform that does not call for federal restrictions on abortion. President Trump has said that pro-life politics may be hurting the GOP politically. What is your stance on the pro-life issue, and would you support a federal law regulating abortion in all 50 states if you're a member of Congress?
Certainly. Well, to start off with, I am a pro-life candidate. I helped pass parental notification out of the Senate, and I want you to know that we must agree with the U.S. Constitution, which is states have rights which are reserved to themselves. Chris Pappas does not believe in states' rights. He wants to even take away our voting rights for us to be able to run our own elections here in New Hampshire. He is leaving his states' rights behind when he wants to do a full-blown abortion on demand anytime, anywhere, anytime. That is not right. States' rights should be protected. And as a congressman, I will make sure that Anything that has to do with the abortion issue is reserved to the states to decide. And I agree where we are here in our state, and it is compliant with Roe v. Wade, and I have worked on that as a senator as well. And I will continue to fight for New Hampshire's right to rule their own state.
Just to clarify, Russell voted with Chris Pappas to fund Planned Parenthood. You may say it's to provide primary care, but primary care is more than my reproductive organs. If we have a real issue with rural health, then we should fund rural health. I am pro-life. I have worked at the end of life my whole career as a geropsych nurse working with people with dementia. I see the sanctity of life at both ends. The Supreme Court got it right by giving it back to the state, and that's where it belongs. I would not support a federal ban.
So you were invoked. 30 seconds for you, Russell Prescott.
Certainly. If you compare my vote for funding sexually transmitted diseases funding to my pro-life record, it is apples and oranges. It is not appropriate. When you have the opportunity to make sure you take care of the citizens of our state, and the law says we wouldn't want to fund sexually transmitted disease testing, I voted for it because that is what needs to be done. It's following the law.
Donald Trump's a political junkie, and I think he's absolutely right when he talks about the abortion policy with respect to the effects it's had on the GOP. And what the Dobbs decision did was give it back to the states, and I think that's a good thing. Because 100 years from now, we could be sitting in this room debating the topic of abortion. It's just too polarizing, and you're never going to convince somebody that views it from one lens to agree with someone that views it from the other one. We're just never going to come to an agreement on that. So when you could push it down to the states, it gets it closer to the electorate. So to that end, I support where New Hampshire is. We have a 6-month, abortion policy. After that, it starts to look ugly. And I think that that's the extreme position. The Democrats have taken the extreme position to say that you can have an abortion up until basically the last day. We have to do a better job of defining what our stance is here in New Hampshire, and we have to push back on kind of the policy that we're against women's rights. We're just not.
To me, partial birth abortion does not start after 6 months. It starts after the 15th week. I feel bad for the people who are running for state senate and governor right now. They have to deal with that issue. It's a polarizing issue. I think it's why we didn't do so well in the midterms. I hope that women have come to realize that abortion should not be a single reason why you should vote for a candidate. If you're going to vote for women's rights, you should be voting for women's rights so that men can't be playing in women's sports or your kids' high school sports. I hope that's what women will come to. Abortion is everywhere around us. You can go to Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, and in this state you can get an abortion, unfortunately, up to 6 months. That's my personal belief, but as a federal, if I get elected to Congress, I will not vote to take away states' rights. So I will stay where we are and leave it to the states under the ruling of the Supreme Court, and that's what I'll stand by.
So we have time for one last 30-second lightning round, then your closing statements, which will start again with Joe Levesser. Holly Novaleski, 30 seconds. Is President Joe Biden physically and mentally fit to serve another 4-year term? And what do you say when people ask you about it?
I'm a geriatric psychiatric nurse practitioner who's worked in dementia care. No, he is not.
I mean, duh. Like we all saw that last week. I mean, it was just absolutely appalling. We've been lied to for the last 2 years, and I was talking to Julian just beforehand, and Chris Pappas said nothing, and then they asked him about it. Might even have been you, and it was no comment. Watch him start to fall in line, and I mean, I'm just tired of being spun. We see it with our own eyes, and it's just appalling.
Of all the hoaxes that have been thrown at Donald Trump, the real hoax has been the Democrat Party with this guy Biden in there. We've known for a long time he's just not prepared for the job. He just can't handle the job. I wouldn't let that guy use a butter knife to butter his own toast.
Yeah. And he's the chief executive of our country, and I wouldn't let him run my company for sure, that he is not capable of running our country.
So your final statements, we'll start with Joe Levesser and go down, and you'll get the last word, Chris Bright.
My name is Joseph Kelly Lavasser, LavasserForCongress.com. I've been in the political arena for 25 years. I've owned a restaurant for 35 years. I've been a self-employed attorney for 23 years. I sat on the planning board for 4 years. Your problems are problems that are my problems. I know what it costs to run a business. I know what it costs for utilities. I know how hard it is to get through the government to get things done. I know that you have to get a variance to get a shed on your lawn without the government getting involved in your life. I'm the guy that people call. I have won 7 straight elections in a blue city as a Republican, not a milquetoast Republican, a Republican that is Trump tough, who calls it as it is, and has always protected the taxpayers and the people who own small businesses in my city. I have taken thousands and thousands of calls and helped thousands and thousands of people in this city. I am ready on day one to go to Congress and do the same great job that I've done for the city of Manchester as I will do in D.C. You will love me as your congressman, I promise you.
Applause is welcome.
As a person that's run a business for 40 years, I take care of my employees. 100% of health care is paid for by the company. Profit sharing for 401k is paid by the company. And I make sure that we balance our budget every single week. That is being a person that is capable of running the budget in the United States House of Representatives. I will do that. I have always been accessible while I was in the state Senate and the Executive Council. My number, my first cell phone number ever, is 603-231-7822, and it has been publicly on the website of the state Senate for 10 years and publicly on the website for Executive Council for 4 years. I am receptive to all calls and will answer everyone who calls and work hard for you. The last thing I'd like to say is, like I say, for 42 years I've been married to the greatest person I ever met in high school, and that is my wife. And I'd like to thank her. She said, "I'm not going to let you go down to that swamp alone. I will protect you." And I thank her for that.
My grandmother came here in 1913 from Russia to escape the pogroms. My stepmother was Israeli. Growing up, I went to Israel for the summer, and I came home and I sat around the dinner table and I said, "I love Israel." And my grandmother looked at me and said, "No, you love this country. This country has been good to us." I learned to love this country from my grandmother. My father was a Merrill's Marauder. I learned to fight for this country from my father, and he's the reason why I went into the reserves. And he also told me, when things are hard, that's when you step up. When you see something that needs to be done, do it. So I've learned to fight and to love this country for my family. But more importantly, I look in my grandson's eyes, and I can't say to them, "I didn't try." We need to make sure that we entrust and we save their future and their American dream for them. And that's why I'm in this race.
Years ago, and plus 12 days, I left for West Point 5 days after graduating from high school, and raised my right hand and swore an oath to the Constitution. And it's something that I've lived by my entire life, whether I've been in uniform or out. In fact, 2021, I was sitting on my back porch and my phone rang, and I picked up the phone. It was an unknown number, and somebody said, "Captain Bright," and I hadn't heard that guy's name in a while. And essentially, they said, "Hey, we need you to come back. We've lost some of our capabilities within the civil affairs, and we think that you could be of value." At the time, I was a single father, 4 kids. I built a business through the epidemic. It was a lot to walk away from. But I told them, if the country needs me, there's no way I could say no. So at 46 years old, I strapped a parachute back on and was jumping out of airplanes. And I could tell you it hurt a lot more than it did when I was in my 20s. But I will always put the country first. I swore an oath to the country, not a person, not to an individual party. And it's something that I take very seriously. And if I get to Washington, D.C., I'll fight tooth and nail for the best interest of the U.S. Thanks.
And a round of applause for all of the candidates, please, if you don't mind. You did a great job. Also, thank you to Evan Lips, New Hampshire Journal. Sam Farrington from the UNH College Republicans was our timekeeper. I'm Michael Graham. It's NHJournal.com. All these videos are on the website. They're on YouTube. Please share them with your friends. I think tonight was very helpful in informing Republican primary voters about the future. Thanks for watching, and we will be doing this again with the governor's candidates next month.
There's still a minute left. I want to stay.